Hey, good morning or afternoon or evening. I don't know, whenever you're watching this. Hey, these are our chapter 14 notes for economics. And chapter 14 is about money and banking. Money and banking, as it says there. So this should be everyone's favorite chapter, right? I mean, it's about money, everyone's favorite thing. So what is money? What has it been historically? What is it today? On the one hand, I feel like we think we just automatically know that question. There's almost silly to like study it, right? Like that's money. That's it. We get it. And almost all of us would take more of it if offered, right? But I mean, I don't know. Let's say I had a euro in my pocket, or a Japanese yen, right, or a Mexican peso, or a Canadian dollar. For those things, money, does that count? Well, sure. I think most of us would say, right. On the other hand, if I walked into the gas station on Main Street today and handed them a wad of Canadian dollars, Mexican pesos, European euros, British pounds, you get it. And asked for a Gatorade, are they going to give me a Gatorade? Probably not. And so if I walked into that gas station and handed them, a bunch of leaves, they're not giving me a Gatorade. They might call the police. What if I handed them my phone and said, hey, I'll give you my phone for a Gatorade? I don't know. Maybe I get the Gatorade. Maybe the person working like wants my phone and is willing to throw some money in the register, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the economic definition of money really focuses on four things, and I have, or three things, I'm sorry, three things, and I have two of them listed here. So medium of exchange and store of value are the two big ones, I would say. And then really unit of accounting is a third major element of what makes money money, right? So if it was seashells in Pacific Islands 1,000 years ago, or wampum, many people use the term, but native peoples in North America and South America had lots of different things, materials that were used as money. These days, of course, I think we think of U.S. dollars, right? Or Mexican pesos or Canadian dollars or Japanese yen or whatever it is. But, over time, money has been all sorts of things. Roman coins, right? Many of us have probably seen in a history book or a museum or whatever. Were those money? Well, most of us would argue yes, I think. Economists would certainly argue yes. And why? What makes it money? So if it functions as a medium of exchange, that is the biggest deal, really, that counts as money, whatever that thing is, if it's functioning as a medium of exchange. So what on earth does that mean, medium of exchange? It means if I hand the person a bunch of leaves and they give me a Gatorade, that worked. That was a medium of exchange. The leaves themselves are acting like the value of something else. Meaning that person at that store would feel like they could take those leaves that they stuck in their cash register for the Gatorade they sent out the door. They could take those leaves and, I don't know, pay their employees with it, or pay taxes to the government with it, or pay their electric bill, or go buy more Gatorade to sell next week, right? As long as whatever you're using, paper currency like we're used to, Roman coins, widely used 2,000 years ago, Japanese yen if you happen to be in Tokyo, but cows, if you are a Maasai tribe in Kenya, seashells, like I said, in many Pacific Islands, cocoa beans, if you were an Aztec 600, 500 years ago. Anyway, anything that functions as a medium exchange, that really is money. And that was this huge sort of human leap, evolution from this concept of barter. So for tens of thousands of years, humans bartered with each other as small groups and tribes and societies, bands of people. I was pretty good at hunting and killing deer. I'm sure I was not. I'm sure none of my relatives ever in the history of my gene lineage were ever hunters. But let's just pretend that my great to the power of 32 grandfather, right, was a remarkable hunter. He'd go out and kill a deer and a rabbit and squirrel and possum, wombat, whatever, and right could bring that meat back. But deer all day long, mixed in with some squirrel and wombat, gets a little tiring and isn't really all that healthy and so on, right? And then, oh my gosh, it's dead of winter and really hard to find a deer, perhaps. Anyway, other people, of course, are really good at fishing. And then other people were good at picking berries and roots and you name it, right? And then eventually, of course, we start planting seeds and farming. And anyway, the sort of world history story of the growth of civilization, yeah? Well, as we're going through that, humans are trading, bartering with each other all the time. So they're doing fish for, hey, it's Mr. Randall. Hi, Mr. Randall. So we're doing fish. The guy who could fish really well, right, is willing to like trade some of that fish to great grandfather Schusky for some of that deer I killed. And anyway, we get it, right? So I have to be able to trade some peas for some beans, or fish for berries, whatever. The fancy economist term for that is a mutual coincidence of wants, right? That's what barter means. That's when barter works. You and I, if we're going to trade two goods, I have this, you have this, and we want to trade it to each other, right? At the same time, we have to, at that moment, each of us be in the same place. This is pre-Amazon. .com, there was an Amazon then. But anyway, so I have to want those berries, and you have to have them. And you have to want my deer meat, and I have to have it at the exact same time. And then we have to be able to meet and know that. And they did not have text messages then, for most of the last 10,000 years, actually, of human history. So anyway, so barter was the only way humans had to trade goods for a very long time. But there was a massive sort of economy of barter around humans trading things. Right here in Collinsville, Illinois, Cahokia Mounds, they have seashells from the Gulf of Mexico, iron ore that must have come from Minnesota that was used to dye or make other materials here. And then they find elements and things from here at Cahokia throughout the Midwest too. Anyway, there's this vast trade network, right? Even thousands of years ago, throughout North America and South America and Africa and Europe and Asia and Australia and you name it, of course, all over. But it was all barter, the point is. And it isn't until about 2 or 3, maybe 1,000 years ago, which sounds like a long time, but in 10,000 years of human history, right? Like fairly recently, humans really kind of give up this notion of barter and move on to this idea of a medium of exchange. Like, to take the Romans as an example here, it became increasingly irritating to say, oh, I want some berries and I have some deer. I'll go down to the market and there's always some berry people there, but oh my gosh, the berries are all gone, or man, what a hassle to get down there. And then the other problem is, right, so I give the berry dealer my hunk of meat from the deer. Well, now the berry dealer has to sit there with this hunk of meat all day long out in the sun at the market, perhaps, or whatever. Anyway, it becomes sort of unwieldy, right? And then the berry dealer really doesn't want the meat. They want, I don't know, whatever, corn, wheat, something, jewelry. Well, now they have to like find the jeweler who wants the deer meat, right? And then be able to trade deer meat for jewelry and so on and so on. Anyway, it becomes sort of annoying, is the point, yeah? And humans come up with this idea of like, hey, let's have something represent a certain amount of maybe berries or deer meat or jewelry or whatever, right? Let's come up with a coin, make a nice round circle thing. Let's put a hole in the middle of it so I can put them all on a string and put it around my neck. And hey, that's the first purse or wallet. We still do that today, though. We call them necklaces, right? But anyway, so we come up with coins, really, as humans throughout the world as the first sense of money that is really holding or storing value. So that coin doesn't have any value by itself. The coin simply represents real value, right? Like this coin is just worth that meat that guy will give me at some point, yeah, if I can give him this coin back, or those berries, or whatever, or whatever. So anyway, coins come to be used as money representing other things, and that's the very idea of medium of exchange. So once we have that sort of creation of coins, or it could be bills, or it could be seashells, or it could be any material item, usually. But once we have that idea, if it functions, the medium of exchange is money. And then the other important thing that money does is it is a store of value, simply meaning the more you have of it, the more it's worth, the more you get for it, right? So one coin would get you, a hunk of deer meat or a handful of berries. 2 coins should necessarily get you 2 handfuls of berries or 2 hunks of deer meat or whatever, right? The more coins have to necessarily, if the system works, represent more of everything. Jewelry, land, labor. Hey, if I'm going to build a fence for you, I would like a couple of those coins. Oh, you want a fence in the front and backyard? Well, I want twice as many coins as we had agreed on originally. So anyway, store value, the more coins you have, money you have, paper bills, Bitcoin, seashells, wampum, the more you have, the more it's worth. That's simply store value. And then unit of accounting simply means like, hey, let's be able to, record this stuff in a checkbook or in a papyrus scroll to show Pharaoh that I donated my proper amount of wheat for the year, whatever it is. Anyway, so money can function as a nice way to sort of make society work on those levels too, right? Okay, once we've created money, whether that's seashells, the Aztecs did use cocoa beans widely, whatever, right? Bitcoin these days, possibly. Anyway, good old fashioned US currency, right? The US dollar bill. Whatever those monies are that humans have used, we can also look at them like, what are their characteristics? How do they work? So economists sort of score them on these ratings. Is that money durable, portable, divisible, stable, scarce, or accepted? And for money to work, it has to be, to some degree, all of those things. Pardon me. And really, it's just sort of like the easy definitions of those, right? Like durable means, does it last? Does our money last? So our paper money is really terrible on the durability scale. So this dollar bill only has a lifespan of approximately 18 months, about a year and a half, and that thing should go away or get, crinkled and yucky and whatever. So our coins are incredibly durable. Seashells were quite durable, but not quite as durable as coins. Anyway, so durability, does our money last? And these days, most countries simply have paper money and some coin, although of course increasingly moving to electronic funds too, which is as durable as it gets, as durable as an electron, I suppose. Is money portable? So our dollar bill is quite portable, right? I can take that just about anywhere. That's not much of a burden. If we had just all coins, a little less portable actually, right? Like if, let's say we didn't have any paper money and all money was coin, quarters and pennies, and it's a little irritating, but doable. The cocoa beans the Aztecs used, throw them in sacks, carry them around, pretty portable. What about the cows that the Maasai tribe of East Africa, mostly Kenya, used and still uses to a degree as their form of currency or money? Boy, that's not very portable at all. I mean, a little bit, but kind of annoying, right? So anyway, and then divisible. So can I buy one piece of gum for a dime? Well, if I got this thing, then I just get 9 dimes back and a piece of gum, right? Like we've divided it up nice and easily, so it's very divisible. That cow, not so much, right? So he wants to, the side guy shows up in my gum shack and says, hey, I'd like to buy a piece of gum. I have this cow, that's my money, like trying to buy a piece of gum with a $100 bill or a $10,000 bill. It's tough to like shave a little bit of the cow off and give him a stick of gum. So anyway, how divisible is our money? Our money seems totally divisible. It's not completely, right? Like I can't get lower than a penny when I'm actually physically purchasing stuff. Luckily, nothing we buy is less than a penny, right? Can you think of anything that's worth less than a penny? Hey, how much does gasoline cost? So next time you go by a gas station, check out the price, right? It is never $2.29 a gallon. Look closer, right? It is $2.29 and 9/10. They go to the thousandths place in gasoline sales in this country. Most people just pretend it doesn't even happen or ignore it or whatever. But I would love for you to go buy exactly 1 gallon of gas. Look at the exact price, which is $2.29.9. And then when you walk in and try to pay for it and they say it's $2.30, demand your 1/1000th of a dollar or 1/100th of a penny back. Good luck. But anyway, so our money is quite divisible, down to the penny. And then is it stable? Does our money stay relatively worth relatively the same amount over time? So the Roman Empire ends up collapsing for multiple reasons. One of them is vast inflation takes over. Stuff just keeps costing more and more and more and more every single year in Rome. And so anyway, money has to be fairly stable for economies to work long term. Well, the money should be scarce, meaning like leaves could be money, just like dollar bills could be, or seashells or whatever. Humans all sort of just mutually agree is money, and it works as long as we all agree. But anyway, it has to be fairly scarce. So leaves as money would be problematic because we'd all be billionaires, which would mean none of us are really billionaires. Inflation would be out of control, right? Anyway, so some degree of scarcity has to exist for money to have much stability and worth and value. And then lastly, it simply has to be accepted. So is the Canadian dollar money? I mean, in Canada it is, but in Collinsville Quick Trip, kind of not really, right? Like it is not accepted there. I have to go change that money into US currency to go buy. Unless maybe they take Canadian dollars there, right? Like maybe they have family in Canada, they go there all the time, they're happy to do it. There are certainly places in Unit 10 that use, Mexican peso and American dollars almost interchangeably, right? And they have an exchange rate, you name it. Lots of places in the world, like on the border between Canada and America, they'll take both currencies. Lots of resorts throughout the world will take US dollars as well as local currencies. So anyway, so those are my characteristics of money. And then I have to move. There I am. So then lastly, types of money. So humans really started off with that barter sense we talked about, right? Then they start to develop this idea that like, hey, if whatever I'm using is money, like that hunk of deer meat, right? Or berries, the better if it lasts. So cocoa beans for the Aztecs particularly, cows, my example there, but wheat possibly. Anyway, anything that had value itself. So let's take cocoa beans, which the Aztecs used widely, right? Like, sure, I don't really want cocoa beans at the moment. I'm a hunter and I got all this deer, right? And I'll go to the market and I'm like, oh, this deer. And they're like, hey, we'll give you these big sacks of cocoa beans for it. I'm like, I hate cocoa, but okay, fine. I'll take them because I know I can take that one sack and hand it to this guy to build a fence at my house. And I can take a handful of these cocoa beans and go down the market and hand those to that person for some berries, and to this other person for some corn. That it's functioning as money, just like dollars, like we think of today, right? But they were cocoa beans. Well, but what's better about cocoa beans, or to the Aztecs, why is that the first money? Because if all of a sudden people say, oh, no, cocoa beans, give me I don't want any of those. I could go turn them into something else useful, right? Chocolate. Basically. But anyway, it's a food source by itself, the cocoa bean. So it has value itself. So people trusted it, right? People would say, this is cool. I'll accept cocoa beans. And we'll start developing it as sort of what we think of as money today as a currency, right? That becomes a little irritating, especially when what we think of as commodity money might be gems or jewels, cows, wheat, which is in fact fairly difficult to lug around and divide up and so on and store safely. So then people start to say, Rome, coins, this happens all over the world. China did this, African civilizations did this, you name it. But so let's start to say, hey, look, let's just have like a piece of paper or a coin. But that piece of paper represents something with value. So sure, by itself, this little piece of paper is just a flimsy, silly piece of paper. But if I know that I can go turn this piece of paper in for cocoa beans, a set number, right? Or for a part of a cow, or for a certain amount of, say, I don't know, silver or gold. This simply represents representative money, a certain amount of something that has actual value. So no one really thinks this has actual value, but it represents actual value, right? And there's silver sitting in a government bank somewhere. And rather than taking silver around with me and trying to shave off little bits of silver for that handful of berries, I'm going to start developing little pieces of paper that represent that silver. And these pieces of paper, durable-ish, very portable though, very divisible, right? Anyway, they'll function as representing silver, and we'll use these pieces of paper all over the place. And then at some point, we can always go to the bank, take those little pieces of paper, representative certificates of real money, silver, gold, whatever a society chooses, turn those in and get my real money back. So humans did barter for like 10,000 years. Then they did commodity money for a couple of thousand years. Then they start to switch to this idea of representative money, and that is fairly new. I mean, a little bit in Roman times, but really, like in our country's history, just about the first 200 years, maybe 300 years, digging back to colonial times, this idea of representative money really takes off here, a little bit older in Europe and Asia, and Africa. But in terms of like recent history, almost all humans used representative money for most of the last 200 or 300 years. We had pieces of paper or coins that represented real money defined as silver or gold somewhere. Now, who decides that's real? I mean, but anyway, humans basically said, we're going to accept that gold or silver is real, and we'll allow these pieces of paper that'll float around to represent that. And so that's representative money. That's, 1700s, 1600s, maybe to about 1950. And so in the last 70 years, almost every single country on earth has left that idea of representative money and has moved straight into the third type of money called fiat money. And fiat, besides being a crappy Italian car, is a word that means government order, right? Like if I take over and govern by fiat, I'm governing just like by my order of stuff, by my fiat. Anyway, so fiat money, government money order, government ordered money. Fiat money is what we now have. That this notion of representative money in effect starts to fade away from the 50s to the 70s throughout the world. And so really in my lifetime, born in 73, from that moment on, there really isn't representative money left. These pieces of paper come to exist only because the US government says so. And the British pound exists only because the British government says so. There is no gold, there is no silver backing up that dollar anywhere. The US left the gold standard in sort of a long, convoluted story between like the 50s and the 70s. A lot of people still think, right, there has to be a certain amount of gold in Fort Knox or whatever for every piece of paper printed. Absolutely 100% not true. If the government wanted to print 10 billion or trillion or one of these tomorrow, it could. Yeah. And we'll talk more about that in the remaining couple of chapters, how that could be a terrible idea and why that might be a good idea and what the government's doing now, regardless. But anyway, so we do in fact now have fiat money, value only through government order or fiat. Japan can print as much money as it wants. It does not have to find new gold to do so. So this is a perfect example of a fiat bill only containing value because we all accept that it does and because the US government says so. This is backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. If I decided that it wasn't worth anything, well, I would tell my employer, no, I'm not accepting dollars in my paycheck. I want something else. Seashells, deer meat, gold, silver, whatever, right? But I accept this as my payment every 2 weeks. Unit 10 throws some of those in my bank account. And it's handy because I can go to Panera and get a mango smoothie. And I give them some of these and I get my smoothie. And I can pay my rent and I can buy my ties. And when I go down to Panera and hand them some of these, right, they on Friday can turn around and take some of those bills I gave them and pay their employees and maybe make some profit and buy new mangoes, whatever. Anyway, so that's sort of a quick little history of, maybe not so quick, the US, the human evolution of money, right? So barter, commodity, representative, fiat, and G, what is money? So that fundamental idea of like a medium of exchange, but also importantly, having a store of value and being a unit of accounting. There you go. That's our first half of chapter 14 notes. I'll shut up and we'll do the last 2 slides of chapter 14 next time. See you.